Caitlin Clark, right? Like she's lighting things up. She's probably made more in NIL money or could potentially make more. The money in the WNBA is non-existent.
Right.
Right? Like,
but she could change that.
But can she?
In Indian, something took place behind closed doors. Something that may alter all we believe to be true about the Fever. Several podcasters and internet insiders claim that billionaire owner Steve Simon, head coach Stephanie White, and top Fever officials met in secret at Pacers Entertainment headquarters. There has never been any public confirmation of what was stated in the chamber. However, if these stories are even partially accurate, it might account for all of the perplexing events that have occurred in recent months. Caitlin Clark's position, lineup choices, and the abrupt change in the team's attitude. It's said that power intervenes when money starts acting strangely. And that's precisely the subject of this tale. The most valuable rookie in women's basketball history, together with money and power. Because a millionaire is said to have said, "This is CCT from here on out," which stand for Caitlin Clark's team. It's not just about basketball. It's a corporate directive.
I feel like your two Iowa teams left a mark on women's college basketball, but also women's basketball at large. Is that like kind of crazy to think about? Like you were a part of something that was a catalyst for this like larger group.
I had heard about this Caitlin Clark and I was like watching videos of her just like having like 40 points, like averaging.
However, you must examine who is actually in charge of the Indiana Fever in order to truly comprehend how we got here. The majority of supporters consider the Fever to be just another WNBA club. However, they're a part of one of America's most potent sports empires behind the scenes. The Simon family, billionaires who also control the Indiana Pacers and the enormous Simon Property Group, the biggest retail chain in the U.S., own the franchise. Herb Simon, a giant in Indiana business circles who is in his 90s and far too elderly to be overseeing day-to-day operations, is at the top of it all. Stephen Howard Simon, his son, can help with it. Many insiders think that Steve, the vice chairman of Pacers Sports and Entertainment, is the true decision-maker for both the Pacers and the Fever. He doesn't need to, doesn't publish much on the internet, and doesn't want recognition, because you don't need to tweet about running a billion-dollar empire. The Simon family apparently began to pay attention when fans noticed that ticket sales were declining, viewership was declining, and Caitlin Clark's name was not as popular as it had been. Additionally, someone typically receives a call when billionaires begin to pay attention.
Caitlin Clark and Nafisa Collier were named WNBA All-Star captains for this year's WNBA All-Star Game. The captains were chosen via fan vote, and Caitlin Clark received 1.29 million All-Star votes this year.
Caitlin Clark was more than simply a player when she joined the WNBA. She was a movement. Viewership records were broken by her debut. Overnight, sales of jerseys skyrocketed. Tickets for Fever went from being almost hard to sell to being sold out. Indiana basketball, not just the Pacers but also the Fever, were the talk of the country for the first time in many years. Each of the three logos she introduced wasn't only an attempt. It was goal marketing. Her face was desired by brands. Her games were sought after by networks. Every child aspired to shoot like her. The advent of Clark was expected to usher in a new era for the WNBA as a whole, not just for the Fever. However, the coach changed, the system changed, and the team's whole identity altered. The 3ES logo vanished. The highlights became slower. The Fever began to play basketball in a slower, safer, and less thrilling manner. What happened to Caitlin Clark's freedom? Fans began to wonder. And someone considerably more important was allegedly asking the same questions in private, deep within Pacers Entertainment offices.
2 turnovers in a row, and Steph yanked me, and she was like, this is like a learning moment. Do we need that in this moment? Like, no. Right. And then she subbed me back in. There was a play where I kind of got a steal, and like we're going in transition, and Kelsey Mitchell just like takes off down the middle of the floor, and so there's like 2 people kind of by her, and I literally like go to grab the ball, and then I like just dribble.
Stephanie White had a definite vision when she became head coach. A well-rounded offensive that prioritizes collaboration over celebrity. She desired structure, motion, and movement. The sort that casual fans ignore but basketball connoisseurs like. Caitlin Clark's role decreased as a result. Her signature deep threes were restricted by the system, and occasionally she appeared more like a floor general than a phenomenon. To be fair, the squad did begin to win. For the first time in years, they even qualified for the playoffs. However, something else was declining while the Fever were getting better on the court. Their numbers, ticket sales, and ratings all declined, and the viral moments that had previously taken over social media abruptly stopped. Because, let's face it, winning games isn't the WNBA's main draw. It's just Caitlin Clark being herself. And that's when executives began to feel uneasy, according to recent reports. The family that owned the money machine chose to intervene when it started to slow down. This is the part of the narrative where things become crazy.
I think it's a really big thing that Diana Taurasi got on the mic and she said these things about Clark after. It kind of, I don't know if it's going to change the viewpoint of Caitlin Clark from a lot of these old bitter, all these old bitter Bettys that are still in the league.
And source stated that Steve Simon personally called a secret meeting with Stephanie White and key executives Amber Cox and Kelly Kroskoff, according to remarks made during a Fever Fan Liver live stream that were then discussed by a number of podcasters. The purported message was very evident. This CCT going forward, that is Caitlin Clark's group, if accurate, it is a clear directive from the top level to revamp the system, the brand, and the emphasis on Clark. Why? Because she is $1 billion investment in media, marketing, and significance rather than merely a player. According to the report, Simon informed the three that going forward, Clark's comfort, utilization, and visibility must come first in all choices. Apparently, this didn't sit well with everyone in the room. Stephanie White was purportedly one of the individuals. According to the sources, when she was informed that her system would have to be designed around a single player, she lost it. In response, Steve Simon allegedly said, "You don't have to like it, but that's the way it is." In that office, the stress reached a breaking point.
You don't understand how hard it was for me to not throw that. And she's like, "Oh, I know. Trust me." Everybody was like, "We saw you about to throw that." But I think it's just like kind of a learning process.
This clip bothered me because if you watch that play where she didn't pass Kelsey the ball after Coach Stephanie White benched her for having a few turnovers in a row, that would have been a momentum shift.
Is this verified now? Number. However, this is the point at which things begin to make sense. Fans noticed an odd change following that alleged meeting. Stephanie White called Kelsey Mitchell the key to the Fever's attack going ahead and publicly hailed her as the team's #1 objective. However, insiders began to murmur in secret that the front office and coach were no longer in sync. According to the story, there was conflict about power as well as basketball. According to reports, White won her motion offense. Caitlin Clark's squad was desired by the ownership. And guess who often prevails in that dispute in a franchise owned by billionaires? Nevertheless, Stephanie White deserves praise for not giving up. She strengthened her system even further. That's when conjecture took off, even as fan annoyance increased. Was White's employment secure? Was there division in the front office? More significantly, did Caitlin Clark unintentionally become entangled in a covert power struggle? According to several sources, the reason the Fever's offseason feels so precarious is precisely because of this tension. Because the coaching staff may not be as safe as it appears if ownership actually did pick a side. This leads us to the one factor that consistently dispels rumors: money. To be honest, billionaires don't give a damn about offensive systems. Revenue is important to them. They're interested in sponsorship checks with lots of zeros, sold-out venues, and TV agreements. Furthermore, no one in the history of women's athletics has made as much money as Caitlin Clark. The Fever's ratings increased dramatically while she was on fire. Those numbers decreased as her position decreased. That isn't an opinion. That is a fact of business. Therefore, from a business standpoint, it seems natural that Steve Simon supposedly brought everyone into his office to demand that the Fever become CCT. You safeguard the celebrity who helped establish your brand. Your system is based on what viewers are willing to pay to see. It's not conceit. It has to do with economics. Furthermore, the Simon family did not ignore economics in order to create $1 billion business that, if the profitable brand suddenly slows down, you take quick action to remedy it. To be clear, this is all claimed. There has been no public confirmation of any of these encounters. However, everything points in the same direction, including the coaching conflict, the downturn in business, and the abrupt shifts in strategy. It's also difficult to ignore when the connections are so clear, because basketball is no longer the only aspect of this. It concerns who is actually in charge of Indiana sports. Who has the last word? The millionaire upstairs or the coach on the sidelines? The Fever aren't only Caitlin Clark's squad due to talent, if the claims are accurate. Ownership declared them to be hers. That, if that's the case, all of Indiana's executives, coaches, and players have a new boss. Someone wearing the number 22. Consider it. A 90-year-old millionaire transfers power to his son, and whole league's finances are altered by a generational superstar. A coach attempts to control her system. In the meanwhile, a covert fight for control over the future of Indiana women's basketball breaks out. When you consider the statistics, the timing, and the ensuing stillness, it seems like a work of fiction. The rumors are uncontested. They're not being addressed either. And sometimes the loudest response of all is quiet. Because if this narrative is even partially accurate, Caitlin Clark altered not just the Fever, but also the person in charge of it. And the WNBA has never seen a power like that. Perhaps this is no longer just about basketball. Perhaps it has to do with legacy, money, and control. And Caitlin Clark appears to be the sole owner of those three things in Indiana at the moment. Fans and insiders are kept awake at night by this question. What comes next? Because the upcoming season won't be only about basketball if ownership actually notified everyone that this is Caitlin Clark's team. That IT will have to do with alignment. Will this be the last phase of Stephanie White's coaching career in Indiana? Or will she adapt and rebuild around Clark's strengths? What about the locker room? Will seasoned players like Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell welcome the change? Or will there be unspoken animosity behind the scenes? Keep in mind that these women are rivals. Every participant aspires to take the lead. However, there could only be space for one superstar in the new Indiana system. Fans have already seen indications of change, like a shift in marketing strategy, more promotions focused on Clark, and comments from officials about expanding our presence internationally. In other words, they're intensifying their efforts against Caitlin Clark. And if that's the goal, she will be the focus of everything next year, from offensive setups to sponsorship agreements. Because this is no longer merely the most well-known rookie in the WNBA. This is a billion-dollar brand that sells ponytails and sneakers. Although the Fever may not officially acknowledge it, all indications point to a significant internal shift. Actions speak louder than news statements. One that has the power to change not just the season, but the franchise's whole course. One thing is certain as the dust settles in Indiana. The fans can sense it, the money is watching, and the power balance has changed. Who will be standing when the next tip-off occurs is now the only question.